Well, hello, everybody. I'm just allowing you a few seconds for the gathering to commence, and it may continue for a little while. I am here on behalf of White and Case, and I am delighted to have everybody with us for this discussion with regard to the Jessup and the participation of White and Case in Jessup. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to note that as we're all aware, we listen to the news, we have our news feeds pinging all the time. This is really an extraordinary and very, very challenging year. And with all that's going on, I'm going to ask you to mute because I'm getting some feedback. I'm just saying that with all that's going on in the world just now, the Jessup is more important than ever. The skills that you are honing, the understanding that you have of politics, and the respect that you are gaining for the rule of law is so key to everything that we look forward to in the future. And we would love to be able to gather with you in Washington, DC for the competition, but we have a next best, and that really is the virtual platform, because we have experience of how this really does bring together teams and judges from around the world, and we can be connected. It's not perfect, but it really is not such a bad solution. And this event is a great example of that, because believe it or not, we have 279 students joining us today from 58 countries. And so that is really something quite noteworthy. Now, we, White and Case, are a global law firm. We have offices covering 32 countries. And we were one of the first US-based firms, and actually one of the first firms at all to establish a really global presence. And we cover just about every area of law that affects cross-border business. And we think that the partnership that we have with Jessup reflects the firm that we are. And in fact, we've been doing this for 15 years now. We have many lawyers. I think this year more than 150 lawyers and staff who support the Jessup every year. That's by judging the rounds, that's by grading memorials, and that's by actually producing the Jessup graphics that you see every year on the virtual platform and in social media. And it's in terms of helping to organize a lot of what happens behind the scenes. So we sponsor national and friendly competitions around the world, and that is covering, Japan to the UK, Canada, Brazil, many other places. And that's only possible because we have many Jessup alumni in many of our offices. And where we don't have Jessup alumni, we really do have Jessup supporters. So today I'm delighted to be joined by a few of our really excellent lawyers, all of whom are Jessup alumni. And they're here to talk to you about their careers, how Jessup played a really important role in taking them to where they are today. And they're here and they're very happy to answer questions that you have on all different aspects. So I'm going to turn the floor over to them. But first of all, I do want to give you just some guidance on how this is going to work. Our lawyers are going to talk for just a few minutes each. And then once each of them have finished speaking, we are magically going to appear in different breakout rooms. And that will mean that we have smaller groups and it's easier for us to speak with you and easier for you to have some time for questions. We also have other White and Case lawyers who join in the breakout rooms, so you'll get more of a sense of who we are and what we are as a firm. Now, there's some action required of you because you're going to see the breakout room options with the lawyers who are leading the discussions on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And then you have to choose where you go. And then once you've done that, once you've got to a room, please do use the opportunity to feel free to ask questions. Just use that virtual hand waving tool and we will be sure to pick you up and give you a chance to speak. And then at 5 to the hour, we'll all be automatically moved back to the main room. You don't have to do anything then. That will happen at the press of a wonderful virtual button. And with that, unless I have missed anything key and important, I'm going to hand over to Dipen to take it away.
Thank you so much, Jackie, and welcome to all of you who are joining this session. Delighted to be addressing people across the globe. Let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Dipen Sabharwal. I'm a partner at Whiting Case. I've been at the firm for nearly 2 decades now. I'm based in the London office and I am the executive partner of our London office. My practice area is international arbitration, where I do a fair bit of advocacy. I participated in the Jessup in 1999, so a good 23 years ago, dating myself. I represented India, the National Law School of India, Bangalore, and we were very lucky to be the first Indian team who had the fortune to win the Jessup World Rounds. Apart from just the enjoyment that you derive from participating in this wonderful competition, the Jessup was pretty much as formative an experience as it possibly can be in my legal career, and it was with largely 3 reasons. The first was, until I did the Jessup, I had no idea about this wonderful thing called public international law. And the Jessup served as a window or a portal to this magical world, which was divorced from the limitations and restrictions of domestic and municipal law, and has existed in this supranational way. A fascinating subject which I learned about and I fell in love with, courtesy the Jessup. The second thing the Jessup did for me is it actually told me, or at least confirmed for me, how much I enjoy advocacy, that I really enjoy arguing both in the oral form and the written form, and writing those memorials in the Jessup and doing those rounds in the national, both in the national rounds and the world rounds in Washington, D.C., really helped me realize that as a lawyer, I wanted to be an advocate and be arguing cases before arbitrators, judges, and decision makers. And the third thing was that the Jessup told me that it was possible to marry both of these interests. The fact that you can be an advocate, but not necessarily an advocate before national or municipal courts. You could actually be an advocate before international tribunals. And one of the reasons why I ended up at Whiting Case is because the firm had a wonderful reputation 2 decades ago and even today for international arbitration, which is a form of international dispute resolution that allows advocates to do advocacy before international tribunals in delocalized environments, much like the advocacy you do in the Jessup. And so really my experience at the Jessup was as close a dry run as it possibly could be for my future career. And for that, I am ever so grateful. So I wish you the best for this wonderful adventure that you're about to embark upon. You will get loads and loads out of it. And I look forward to answering any questions you have when we have any our breakout discussions. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague, Suzanne.
Yes, hi everybody, good morning. My name is Suzanne. I'm an associate in the New York office. I'm also in the International Arbitration Practice Group. My journey in public international law, I would say, started a little before the Jessup. I graduated a master's in public international law from the University of Amsterdam. I then took a position with the Dutch mission to the United Nations, where all these issues really came to life. And after that, I went to law school in the United States. And when I heard about the Jessup, I thought I have to participate in this. This is a really great way to engage with public international law. And that's really what it is. I think the Jessup really gives you a way to engage with international law at a deeper level. I think what's important if you want to pursue a career in public international law is that you become an expert in your field. And the Jessup allows you to do that, right? The Jessup is a great way because the problems are complicated and it's often based on the current issues, and engaging with the material will allow you to form a deeper understanding of how the frameworks and the different legal regimes interact with each other. I think for that reason, a lot of our lawyers are also on an annual basis coming back to the Jessup, judging the Jessup, and grading the papers, because also for us, it's a great way to keep engaged with your skill sets and keep up to date on the current issues. Also, it's a good way to network. Actually, that's a funny story. When I was participating in the Jessup, Eckert, who's also on this call, was one of my judges. And now we often work together on public international law issues at Knijnenburg. So you see how this sometimes comes around. Then back to my point on becoming an expert in your field, I really think that's an important point to focus on when you're in law school, when you're doing your internships, when you're competing with the Jessup. I think for me, I had a vast knowledge in public international law before I joined Knijnenburg, and it allowed me, when I joined Knijnenburg, to get on the cases that were interesting, to get on the cases where public international law was very relevant. In my first year with Jackie, we did a big human rights case, and I had this background in human rights that allowed me to be valuable on that case. And at Knijnenburg, a lot of, I would say most of my work is now engaging with public international law. We have a lot of interesting cases, which is partly the reason that the firm is representing a lot of sovereigns, and it's partly just inherited in doing international arbitration work, where a lot of the work is public international law. I would tell you a little bit about one of the interesting cases I did where you wouldn't think international public law came up, but it did. It was an insurance arbitration case. And we had to figure out, there was a gas factory in Syria that was bombed by ISIS. And in our case, we wanted to argue that we fell under an exception in the insurance agreement because ISIS was a state and not a terrorist organization. So my role in this case was to prove that ISIS was a state, which is a very core public international law question, right? So there's all these interesting issues that come up when you work at a firm at Knijnenburg, and I would say Jessup is a great preparation. So I wish you all the best of luck. And I hand it over to somebody.
Yeah, I think I'm going to step in because I think now, all being well, you're due to hand over to Ty.
Hello, thank you. Hi, I'm MTY. I'm a partner at the Hong Kong office of Knijnenburg. I'm in the private equity M&A team, which means I think one of the only, if not the only, transactional lawyer to be on this call. And so I participated in the Jessup in 2010. I represented the National University of Singapore. And on hindsight, it's really no wonder I became a transactional lawyer, because we had two issues in the Jessup in Maya. And the first one was on territorial sovereignty, so arguing about which islands belong to which state, which is a very, it's a very Jessup question, right? And the other one was something that doesn't appear quite often. It was an argument on the bilateral investment treaty. And so we were going through the arguments with my coach, and my coach just told me, look, you are much better at this investment treaty stuff than you are at the territorial sovereignty stuff. I'm sorry, but you have to do that argument with the numbers and the financial statements. And so I did. And so fast forward 12 years later, I'm now doing private equity and M&A. And I think the message that I would bring from the other side is that the Jessup benefits you regardless of what practice you want to choose, right? Whether it's going to be disputes or transactional work, arbitration, advocacy. And I think the main reason is because you're never again in your career going to spend 6 months thinking about 4 issues and going as deep as you will into 4 issues, right? Like, let's read like 2,000 cases to answer 4 issues. You're never ever in your career going to go as deep as that. And the level of intellectual discipline and the discovery of yourself and how deep you can go and how comprehensively you can understand an issue, all sides of the issue, it's going to put you in good stead, right? You know, even in transactional practice, you argue all the time. You send sort of little emails suggesting the other side is stupid all the time, right? And what allows you to do that, and I'm not saying that you should do that, but what allows you to do that is that intellectual confidence, the ability to go deep into an issue, understand all sides, you know, be able to anticipate counter arguments. That's going to be useful throughout your career, even if, you know, you don't choose a disputes practice, and even if you don't choose a legal practice. Just the honing of your mind, I think, was something that, you know, I've kept to this day, and it's precious. So congratulations on making it this far in the Jessup, and we wish you all the best. And now I am passing off to Kirsten.
Thank you, TY. It is a pleasure to be able to speak with you all here today. I fall right in between Dipen and TY. I did the Jessup in 2007. I participated on behalf of the University of Ottawa in Canada. And the Jessup, I think, you know, when you think back on and reflect in hindsight, the Jessup did two things for me. First of all, I had thought I wanted to be a transactional lawyer. I thought I might join TY in a private equity or a project finance group. I was thinking that that's what I wanted to do. But much like Dipen, I fell in love with oral advocacy and written advocacy as well. And it was not just the doing of the advocacy itself, but it was really the whole process, you know, spending 6 months on a problem, really thinking about not just what is the right answer, what are the right cases, but building those skills about how do you present it in a meaningful way? How do you keep the attention of the audience? How do you deal with the questions from a judge, which could be completely divorced from your line of thinking? And those are the skills that I use every day in my practice. And I probably should have started by saying that my practice is international arbitration. I'm a partner now sitting in Paris. And so that love of advocacy has really carried me far through my career, not just in terms of performing the advocacy, but in learning and recognizing that this was a skill that can be honed and practiced and perfected, and something that you get to work on for your whole career, which I've really enjoyed doing. But the second thing that the Jessup did for me, and I sincerely hope it does for all of you, is it inspired me to think big. It inspired me to think about bigger things for my career. Prior to having done the Jessup, you know, I, like many of you, I had worked very hard at my subjects in law school, and I'd studied Canadian law. You know, this was this is what you do when you go to law school. You study international law, you learn about the history, you learn about the culture. I had very much been exposed at my law school to domestic law firms. And then I learned about the Jessup, and both through the problem itself and the exposure to international law, but more importantly, through the exposure to the people, from my teammates within my university, from the people I competed against across Canada, from the judges, and from seminars like this, I really got inspired to think big. I think the message that I sort of want to leave you with is that anything is possible. You're already developing and building skills that make you very well suited for a career in any kind of international law, indeed any kind of law that you would like. And so I would encourage you to take this, you know, all of the opportunities that you can over this competition, and indeed over your career, to really make connections with other individuals going through this experience with you. It's a once in a lifetime experience, and it's an intense experience that gives you an instant bond. And to just find out more, to let yourself be inspired as to where you might work, who you might want to work with, and what kind of a career path you might want to take. And then the last thing I will say, by passing it over to our anchor Ron, is please keep involved in the Jessup community. It is something that stayed with me, and indeed all of my colleagues throughout my career. My practice tends to focus on private international law, not public international law, and the Jessup is a wonderful way that I've been able to keep my public international law muscle, if I can put it that way, strong, to keep involved with the community, and to keep on top of some of, you know, the most current and the most exciting issues in public international law. With that, I will hand it over to Ron to close this part of our session together today.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone following and joining us today from around the world. A lot of what I'm going to say, I want to, I run the risk of repeating what my colleagues have said, because it's the wonderful things about the Jessup and experience at White and Case that have kind of merged. But I'll just quickly go through it as well. I represented the United States in part with Boston College Law School 10 years ago in the Jessup of 2012, which, even though the last 2 years seem very warped, 10 years ago seems quite a bit of time. I'm a senior associate in our international trade group, currently based in Washington, D.C., but I started in our Geneva office in Switzerland. And I'll just briefly touch about 3 things that I think are kind of woven between my experience as a Jessup competitor and at White and Case. The first, again, to evoke a theme that all of us have talked about today, are the incredible skills you build up being a member of a Jessup team. And in my practice, I appear before administrative agencies as well as federal courts and international organizations. And one of those courts in particular, this is an appellate court at the federal level in the United States, enforces very stringent time limits. And the judges are not experts in the matter. They're generalists. So I get a lot of Jessup nostalgia when I get up there and I have anywhere between 13, usually 13, because I have to reserve 2 minutes for rebuttal, just like in the Jessup, and explain incredibly complicated concepts in international trade, both in federal law and international law, to judges whom have given it maybe no more than 20 minutes. They, just like the Jessup judges, have perhaps read a bench memo. So beyond the skills, there's also substance I'd like to touch on. In the course of working at White and Case, I've had the good fortune to build upon Jessup experience in multiple ways. I can recall one instance in which we were appearing before the appellate body of the World Trade Organization, or WTO, in Geneva, and I was relying upon the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties to specifically apply a unique legal argument that we had in the context of the WTO agreements. Again, a term I think I'm going to use a lot today, Jessup nostalgia. It brought me back right into that experience of my student teammates working on these incredibly complex cases and realizing that instead of a moot ICJ, we were before the real WTO, and how short that gap felt. We've also worked in other international legal environments, such as at the United Nations COP for some of our clients on environmental issues. And again, thinking about the process of interpreting treaties, building treaties, the Jessup experience was instrumental to my success as an associate at White and Case. And finally, we've talked about skills, we've talked about substance. I also want to talk about community. And community is important in 2 different ways when we think about the Jessup. One is about the community of the Jessup itself. And I'm never going to forget when I was at the international rounds, this was in person. And as we've talked about today, one day soon we will be in person again. But looking down at a sea of law students from around the world, they were all dressed in business attire and carrying flags. And I remember sending a text message to a friend of mine from law school back home saying, this is like the most bizarre mashup of the United Nations and the Olympics, because everyone there looked like they were attending a UN conference, but the spirit, the competition, the esprit de corps was like one that you would only find at an international competitive event with good sportsmanship. And then the other is the community that the Jessup affords even after you've done the Jessup. So again, as all of my colleagues on this panel today have talked about, we at White and Case, as a global sponsor of the Jessup, it's important to us not just as an organization, but also individually. Every year that I've been at White and Case, I've judged rounds, be they in the United States or abroad, in part thanks to the virtual platform. We've been involved in writing the problems, writing the bench memorandum, and supporting the competition in so many ways. So if there's one thing I can leave everyone here with today, it's to continue supporting the Jessup after you've competed in it. And that's something that runs through the veins of White and Case as a sponsor of this competition. With that, I'm going to hand this back off to Jackie, who will shepherd us to the breakout rooms.
Thank you very much, Ron. That was very seamless. So everyone, we're really looking forward to meeting you. You are going to see some instructions about how you choose your breakout group. Now you can move between groups, so don't feel that you are going to be only in one room if you would like to meet with different people that you've heard from. And we really do recommend that you take this opportunity to ask questions. You can also contact us later, however. So please join the breakout groups now.